You are now tuned into the 2-Minute Warning, a live stream community conversation pertaining to social and political issues and how we can collectively resolve them. Powered by the Westside Gazette.
Hi, and welcome to the 2-Minute Warning. The 2-Minute Warning is brought to you by the Westside Gazette newspaper. The Westside Gazette is Broward County, the same Broward County that is the largest Democratic Black district in the U.S. Congress. That same Broward County is also the home of the Westside Gazette. And joining me tonight is the publisher of the Westside Gazette and the newly elected chairman of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, Mr. Bobby Henry. That's a whole lot of titles to get out. Joining me is my good friend, Mr. Bobby Henry, and my good brother, Mr. David Wright. How are you brothers doing tonight?
You know, Perry, it never ceased to amaze me how you are able to capture the moment and give us the power we need to get ready for this show tonight. I am terrific and getting better, and it's always an honor to be able to represent and not be afraid to stand up for what's right, to speak truth to power. So we're here from all perspectives. We're here.
Absolutely, we're here, and I'm feeling outstanding tonight. In the words of Charlie Wilson and the Gap, man, we're just outstanding.
Okay. Okay, that's my brother.
All right. Well, man, what's going on, man? There, I know we got, as we say, we are truly coast to coast these days. So, man, we got a lot of ground to cover. So, man, what's going on? It's these weeks are seeming like months since we've seen each other. I'm right home.
Yeah, man. Let's start with the heat. What's happening with you over there on the West Coast?
Oh man, the West Coast is really at the on the front line of this latest climate change or change in climate situation that we find ourselves in. There's been a few recorded incidents of people who've had to be airlifted from hiking trips. I mean, we're talking about an area that is really well suited, and you have a lot of people who really love hiking out here. But these conditions, they're really telling those who are even the most experienced, listen to your body. These conditions are not normal conditions, so you can't take normal precautions. You have to take some extreme precautions because we're dealing with extreme heat. And to hear something like that, man, it really makes you shudder to be so close and yet so, to find yourself in that predicament. We're in California, just outside of that heat zone, but right now, California also is facing extreme heat. In the Death Valley areas as well. So, man, pray for us as we pray for Florida, who is also, taking it out under the chin with weather, because what you guys are getting hit with not just heat, but tropical storms and a few other things, right?
Yeah, man, and we are. But I'm reminded of conditions that would cause airports to shut down and not allow flights to come in because the landing strips are so hot that the asphalt is actually melting, and it's becoming uneven in certain places. I remember a story coming from that particular part of the country, Phoenix, Arizona, to be exact, when they were talking about the runways melting. We get our constant share of thunderstorms and bad weather, But when I look at TV and I see cars coming down the river, and people are on top of them, you know,
Mm-hmm.
this raises, to the question is, what is really going on? What's really happening?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Bobby, you raised an interesting point talking about the what we once did in terms of the airports. Interesting bit of information that we did find out was that on July 4th, which was the highest uh, temperature recorded day in our history, uh, it was also the same day that the most air lines, well, that the most flights have been in the air. And they were saying, well, what are we doing even in these times when we're saying that they're cutting back when we're really adding more, more fuel to this fire?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Well, Perry, coming out of the pandemic, people have been so energetic to just travel and get going again to try to create some sort of normalcy in their lives. So they attributed that to a lot of what we're seeing in the air travel area. But going back to the environment and what we're seeing uh, with heat indexes, what we're seeing in the Northeast with the rain and the floodings. Uh, I mean, you can pick a part of the country and you're going to find something uniquely different to what's going on now that's probably never happened before.
Mm-hmm.
And these are some things that we must take note of. I think today down in the Keys, they had some record-setting temperatures of 99 degrees. So again, you're going to have those deniers of global warming. You're going to have those that just say, hey, it is what it is. Nature is taking its course. It should correct itself at some point. I personally believe there's been human consequences that has created a lot of what we see. And I think it's going to take us to be mindful of that to help reverse it if possible.
Sure. And when the climate is where the climate is concerned, things happen in the climate, it causes other human and animal and the fauna and everything else to react. So when you got the ocean temperature at 90 degrees, you're creating a hot spot for storms that have never been recorded before. And then,
as well as bacteria and other
yes,
environmental.
Right. The sharks, the sharks come closer. You notice the increase in shark bites. So all of this plays a part in the environment. When one thing is affected, it affects all things. That ripple effect. And so we really need to be mindful. Here in Florida, we got malaria. We got mosquitoes carrying malaria, and who would have ever thought that we would be confronted with the cases of malaria that we're now confronted with? We thought that would be in some third world country, if you will, but it's right here. So the effects of climate change, so much so that the EPA, and that's something that we'll be reporting on in the West Side Gazette, and I'm sure in other publications throughout the NNPA with the Environmental Protection Agency, and what they are beginning to do to try to address this issue, and actually coming up with programs that would offer incentives, monetary incentives, and other outreaches to make us aware of what is going on.
Absolutely, but at the end of the day, we have to be mindful. We have to stay hydrated. We have to just avoid these extreme temperatures at all costs. And for those that unfortunately have to participate outdoors in these environments, we just hope and pray that you're protecting yourself at all costs.
Yeah. I'm wondering when we look outside of the door of our office and see the brothers and sisters and the workers who are out there on these 5-6 story buildings working in this intense heat. Fortunately, we haven't seen any rescues to come. So evidently they're doing something right, and there's something we can do to protect ourselves. In this.
Well, hats off to the leadership there, because in Texas, the governor there prohibited water from being distributed at many of these construction sites. The reason behind it is just as baffling as why is the governor passing a bill about what happens on a construction site related to water.
Wait a
But
minute.
nevertheless, yes.
Perry, say that again. You mean to tell me the governor is prohibiting water to be given to the workers on construction sites?
Yes.
They must be Mexicans and other nationalities.
It is Texas, and so again, how do you when you compare that with all the other border talk, and tonight is open discussion, and audience, please jump in where you want to. And I'm not sure if Cheryl Smith is on the line, but I'm gonna ask Cheryl if she can give us some more information on that, if she's here. Ms. Cheryl Smith out of Dallas. The governor recently passed a bill banning the distribution of water at construction sites. Again, something with water conservation. Again, something crazy that he that he will put anything over lives.
Well, that's something in line with these voter regulations that have been established as well, where it's deemed it illegal to distribute water when you're in line at the polls. So again, extremism.
Man. All right, what else is going on here? What else is happening around this wonderful country and world of ours?
Well, last Friday we had some shocking news in the Tulsa area as a dismissal of a reparations lawsuit. And I mean, I don't know where to even start to begin that conversation. We heard many stories about Black Wall Street, the tragedy that had happened there, and how we even had military forces assisting in that whole massacre. And to hear that their lawsuit was just thrown out was truly shocking.
So, and the people who were available to talk about the incident, who lived through that, made pleas to this court and other entities. At 100+ years old, there was no sympathy shown, no remorse, just flat out, we're not going to do it. You don't deserve reparations or some form of assistance for what happened.
Yeah. I mean, the dismissal itself was enough, but to dismiss it with prejudice.
Yes. So they can't come back.
So you can't come back is pouring salt on that wound.
Wow. So, hey man, but Tulsa was not the only city that was torn down, burned down, bombed. There was a city in Florida, Rosewood, another city, Ocoee. So I'm sure if we were to turn the pages of history, and we would find those cities that were destroyed for no better reason than the fact that they are surviving and thriving, and has created an empires, if you will, under this regime of Jim Crowism and the other uh, emphasis of trying to hold people down. So,
well, there's statistics out there that shows there's have not been any type of reparation, compensation for people of color, Africans, throughout the world. So this is nothing new. I feel that this decision in Tulsa just falls suit. And it really leads into another topic of further conversation on the whys of why this continues to happen when we've seen other ethnic groups being compensated. So I don't want to get into naming names, but at some point, gentlemen, it's going to make sense that we take a deeper dive into this full conversation.
Yeah.
Why?
I was reading something that from a biblical perspective, and I'm saying, oh my God, how is it that these people can try to distort the facts using a biblical perspective about reparations? Trying to change the wording, reparations versus restoration or rights. It kind of blew me away, man. That people of clergy would use the Bible to pull up verses to try to discount the reason to assist those who were actually burned out, destroyed, to come up with stuff like, you didn't suffer from it. What the hell you mean? Excuse me, you didn't suffer from it, and yet and still our lineage, our people, and we're still suffering from it. Traumatized.
Yeah. It does. It offers a wide range of discussions about where we find ourselves, and we as a people, we as community-minded people, and we as the elders of a generation that is now vastly taking on these roles of leadership. I mean, we've got some, I think, serious questions to ask that I don't think that we ever thought about it just in those early days of the civil rights, how they considered that moment. Was it a continuous fight or was it a new fight? And I think we have to ask ourselves some of these questions about the fight that we find ourselves in. And taking the appropriate lessons from those fights we've seen in the past. What can we learn from Tulsa at this moment? Not just remember Tulsa, but what can we learn from it? Because Tulsa had a history before the massacre. We focus on that particular part, but there's a story of a community that was built up out of rubble, out of nothing. Can we focus on that story now?
That story. And Perry,
and that's not to put the massacre in any other perspective, but for what it is. But I think if all we do is focus on the massacre, we've short-sighted ourselves of a truly rich story.
And Perry, that brings to mind the Sankofa birth, which means, we have to continue to forge forward, but never forgetting our past, never relinquishing that is truly owed to us. But again, moving forward, forging forward, as descendants of our ancestors, we still empower that great knowledge and wisdom to continue to do. I mean, we're here at the West Side Gazette.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a call today, and I want to thank Reverend R.B. Holmes out of Tallahassee, Florida, and the two guests and myself who we had on the radio show today. And it was the president of Edward Waters College, a university in Jacksonville, Florida, one of the 4 HBCs here in the state of Florida, Dr. Faison. And then there was a doctor from Florida A&M University. And to hear these two brothers articulate from a academic perspective on what affirmative action, the lack of, will do to our HBCUs. And all of this, the Rosewoods, the Ocoees, the town in North Carolina, Wilmington, and those other little small towns that were burned to the ground. And then before they were burnt down, what they represented. And now that affirmative action has taken its course, what are we going to do? And these two presidents, in their own rights, were talking about how the doors of HBCs will now be open. Do we have the structure to accept the students who can come? What about housing? What about professors to teach? This whole scenario of what it means now that affirmative action has been dismantled. And I was just totally blown away. Some things we just don't think about. We don't think about it, but it's right there before our eyes, and it's happening.
Well,
Yeah.
as we know, in order for our HBCUs to survive, it's going to require that we continue to contribute. We continue to encourage our young people to attend these colleges, not just for the historical value that they represent, but also the preparation that's provided in these institutions to prepare you for life in America. So again, it's going to take some dollars and cents.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to hear more about what they talked about.
Oh, yeah.
And in reference to hopefully an increased enrollment in a lot of these historic institutions. Again, my family has been strong proponents of HBCUs, and we must continue to support them.
Yeah,
Exactly.
My comments to end the conversation was these stories. Every HBCU has a story to be told, and those stories need to be told from our perspective. And our perspectives. I'm speaking from the Black press, Black-owned media. Is that when we tell the story, it gives credence and it gives other folk hope, that maybe, not maybe, when they hear the stories and they see the stories and they see people who look like them, they're more apt to contribute the monies or the talents to what it takes to keep these HBCU doors open and people, students achieving, wanting to achieve through that academic arena from an HBCU. So it was extreme. It was. I mean, I was not only was I moved, but to hear these young brothers. And I think Dr. Faison from Edward Waters University is one of the youngest presidents from across the country. And Edward Waters is a university that has set records in what it's doing. But the story is not out there. And like I said to them, let us tell the story. Let's bring this family unit, Trinity, back together. So yeah.
And it is at a pivotal moment because we all understand the GOP's agenda, and it has started in some ways, but we see it now in the way that they're going after these state universities, especially when they're able to put regents on boards. And Bobby, you and I, we're from HBCUs. We've lived through the times where regents who had different philosophies have uh, given our campuses self-inflicted pneumonia at
Yes,
time over fights. And
yes.
so we look at that, and we've got to be vigilant about that, about primarily, how these boards are, because I just heard recently about Florida Atlantic University, how they were just in the process of being in the final decision, and now the regions have now thrown a monkey wrench in that because they want to put one of the governor's lackeys in these positions. And so let us not be mindful about these things that are happening in other places and don't think that they don't have our HBCUs in their back pocket, especially in terms of their associations, just as much as Prairie View in Texas as it is in Texas, and in Texas Southern in Texas as it is FAMU, and
Bethune.
who else? And
Yeah.
Bethune here.
Yeah, yeah. That Perry, what you talked about, the board of regents and trustees and all that. When you have, and let me stop right now and just say this. I want to take a moment for us to just say a prayer for Charles Cherry, who's the publisher of the Daytona Times and the Florida Courier. Charles is experiencing a difficult time right now. And I'm saying this now, and I want us to pray for Charles and his family. A very political family, a strong black family within the black press and other black media. And Charles brought light to what was happening at Bethune-Cookman with some of that chaos that was going on there. So when you talked about that, my mind and my heart went right to Charles. So I want us to pray for him and pray for his family. Charles was able to bring to the attention, along with Attorney Johnny McCray, about some of the ill traps and happening from a board perspective, trying to dismantle an alumni association from Bethune-Cookman University. And some of the same people that sit on the board of Bethune-Cookman University, they sit on the board of Florida A&M University. And we need to be mindful and watch out and keep our eye on the same ones who have caused situations to happen at Bethune-Cookman University not to happen at Florida A&M University. It's almost like a setup. It worked at Bethune to create this chaos. So why can't we do it? We did it at a private institution. So let's go after the state institution.
Right.
One thing about the conversation today, it made a difference between a state university and what it could do, and private universities and what they can do. So we have to come together collectively to save our HBCUs. But I said that because Charles Cherry was one of the newspapers to bring this out, and he's challenged that establishment, the Board of Regents or the Board of Trustees, with the stuff that they were doing to try to destroy this university. He called them out, And so when you mention that, my heart goes out to the Cherry family, and let's pray. Let's pray for this brother, and his family.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but again, that's a perfect example, Bobby. We were talking about before we started tonight about the topics, and we talked about the black press and how all of this is so connected. I mean, no matter what path you start, you find yourself coming back again to another part that gets connected to this. And so the pivotal role that the black press plays in stories sometimes that just never get the air because people are looking for something juicy or something on an entertainer, and the things that are most detrimental to us, we're overlooking it, and it's because of papers like the West Side Gazette and others that are giving life and in some cases some uh, elevation so that these stories can get picked up, and so there's no competition. I mean, we all need to elevate some of these stories.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh,
Well, that's kind of like a perfect segue. We've experienced information coming out of the NNPA conference. And if you guys don't mind, we'd like to share one of those stories. In the 2023 conference, there was some information brought up in reference to when good people write bad policy. And this particular story was in reference to the FDA. There have been health disparities in reference to menthol cigarettes, and we know the health risks in smoking in general. But we do understand the importance of understanding how these treated cigarettes, these formulated, flavored cigarettes, as well as vaping, can do tremendous harm. But the FDA, in all fairness, is saying, Black people are disproportionately provided these menthol cigarettes. They're very popular in the Black community, and it's leading to a lot of health risk. And their proposal was to ban this form of cigarette.
okay.
And the question now is, again, when good people write bad policy. So the NNPA highlighted that. They brought in some law enforcement agents to kind of discuss this policy and what that ban or, making those cigarettes illegal would do as far as policing. And I think we have just a little brief clip. If we can show that clip in reference to what the Dr. Chavis and what they shared with us at that conference. Ari, if you can.
From pro-slavery laws to Jim Crow, to prohibition, to racial profiling, to stop and frisk, history is clear. Racist laws and discriminatory bans have been devastating for Black and Hispanic America. The most recent manifestations of racial profiling are attempts to pass laws that will ban the sale of menthol cigarettes, preferred by over 85% of Blacks and Hispanics who choose to smoke. There is a long and troubled history of more unnecessary police stops and interactions with the police in communities of color, far too often with fatal outcomes.
We know in Black and brown communities, the police hunt. And in non-minority communities, they protect and serve. I'm telling you, I'm an expert on that. I worked in white communities where they could do whatever they want. And in black communities, there was no tolerance. They had to go to jail.
This issue I see right now, we're talking about making menthol cigarettes illegal. But now I know in New Jersey and in New York and some other states, they're making marijuana legal. Recreational marijuana is legal. To my knowledge, cigarettes don't make you high. Cigarettes don't impair your judgment when driving, but we're flipping one for the other. Let's legalize marijuana. Why? Because there's more money in it for the government, right? Let's make menthol cigarettes illegal and arrest more Black and brown people.
When you prohibit or greatly restrict popular adult products, commodities, in underserved, marginalized communities, you quickly develop a competitive illicit market. Managed by local gangs, sometimes the cartels, usually violent, and employing large numbers of our youth to peddle these products. And let me say, most of my career was either in criminal investigation or narcotics investigation when I worked in Maryland with the Maryland State Police in Baltimore.
So this problem is not theoretical, it's happening every day. In areas such as Chicago that have seen violence occur as a result of this have begun to put together task force within their departments just to deal with the crime of illegal cigarette sales.
The proposed ban on menthol cigarettes will do nothing to stop this troubling daily reality in communities of color. The unintended consequences of a ban on menthol cigarettes need to be better understood by public policymakers who are contemplating passing legislation that will ultimately add to the often fatal interactions between Black and Hispanic Americans and police.
We talk about unintended consequences. We really have to be cognizant of this. And two, it may be intended consequences. What?
Mm-hmm.
So, gentlemen,
Wow.
as you've heard, the consequences are there. These are reports from the National Organization of Black Officers and Executives, as well as the National Latino Law Enforcement Organizations. And again, this is when good policies, good intentions. We understand the health risks, but there has to be a more formulated, systematic way of minimizing or weaning folks off of these particular brands of cigarettes than just completely cutting them off.
Right.
And
Right.
now this is an old story that's continuing.
Yeah.
We're starting to see the transition happen, and again, we do not need additional over policing in our Black community.
But the methodology doesn't match with the intent. As you say, it's good policy gone bad, but my thing is the policy seems to be the cover up of a well-intended, of some sort of well-intended disruption more than it is of trying to get rid of a health risk, because it just doing it that way doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't. Nothing about that method makes sense for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, it opens the door and gives access, to an already heated situation.
Right.
I'm glad you're concerned about our health, but I don't want you to use that as a weapon, to drag me in for some other stuff.
Right. Or what made this way better than any other possible way? Was this the only way you could have done this?
What is our brother Wesley Boyd saying? What is Wesley saying?
Yeah.
What Wesley say? BS. Straight up. Legalize weed, make menthol cigarettes illegal, check the food, air, and water being poisoned. Mm-hmm. Look up, that's a good point, Wesley. HEX 29.3. Yeah. So, but it opens the door and give him a legal right to come in and do some more damage. Along those same lines, I was wondering about all this gun violence, that's happening here in the U.S. And I do believe, Rodney, you can do that for me. I do believe that this is something that we need to really pay attention to. This was dated May 2nd, 2023. More than 13,900 people killed in gun violence so far in 2023. Now that was in May. Now, just in July alone, on the first 5 days of July, 26 people were killed in mass shootings. And so here we are in America, in a country where you have a right to bear arms, but do you have a right to bear AKAs and assault weapons and 40 clip magazines and to go out and just wreak havoc? Now, I was talking to a gentleman who was an Uber driver in Chicago, and so we were having this conversation, and he was telling me that during his pickups, when he would pick up the young gangbangers, he would have a conversation with them because he himself had did some time in prison, so it was nothing new to him. So he asked a couple of them, well, where do all these guns come from? How do y'all get all these guns? And the gangbanger said to him, people dump them in the alley. Boxes of guns dumped into the alleys. But this is nothing new. This was done, back in the 60s. So it was reported. So here we are. We have guns being dumped into the alleys, and you have issues and mental health concerns where these guns are now in the hands of those with mental issues. So that's a deadly concoction. Mental health, mental issues with loaded guns. And then you have governors who have passed laws say you don't need a gun permit, you don't need anything.
Training.
You can just open carry, get a gun, and just do what you do. So yeah. It don't matter. So we have all these deaths attributed to gun violence. Now understand this: it's not only the outlaws, if you will, or the criminals, or those with mental health problems doing the shooting. Just 7 hours ago. So that was really it's a little longer than that. But in Colorado, a veteran of the war, kills a 14-year-old boy and injures a 13-year-old. Now this guy was and I want to make sure I'm right. Colorado man was arrested after he killed. Yeah, I think he was a former cop. Well, no, I want to be certain to that. Let me not say that. But however, all of this violence is not only in the hands of the street; it's on another level as well.
Yeah.
So,
added into that, the high cost of housing, and you having parents now to double and triple up and get extra jobs. And so, what is a kid with an actor's mind to do when he walks upon the gun? I mean, we keep talking about unintended consequences.
Yeah, I just left a prayer visual on in Pompano. Pompano alone, little small Pompano. There were, I dare say, 10 families who members had been subjected to gun violence, killed. And this was just the other night. So this is a toxic disease, mental health issue coupled with gun violence. So what do we do? How do we address this?
And then there's some serious concerns when it comes to how we value ourselves, how we value each other. And for many people of color, we felt devalued in this society. And if we look back historically and bring it full-fledged right in front of us today, there are those, as Perry alluded to, where parents are working 2 and 3 jobs, unable to make ends meet. And with all the exposure that's out there, to see people living lavishly when we see a majority of us that are living below what we would call, means in a poverty society. What goes through their minds? And until we continue to have these conversations and address these young people and address the politicians that are making these outlandish laws, we really need to just continue to have this conversation and bring it to light. But again, if the lobbyists are continuing to promote the use and the weaponizing of America, this is going to be a dire situation.
Oh yeah, I must commend Pastor Brandon Jones from Mount Calvary Church. He had the wherewithal to bring the community together, to bring those families. There's another organization called the Circle of Brotherhood that have moved from Miami to Pompano to begin to try to be a liaison between the people and the police departments and those who govern. Mayor Rex Harding was there, along with another commissioner, Allison, and Miss Beverly Perkins, Commissioner Beverly Perkins. They showed a sincere approach to address this situation by dealing with the families. And there were family members who called the police out, who said outright, "You know who the killers are. My family knows who killed my brother, and yet we try to tell you and nothing's done." You know, so I mean, there's several sides to this problem, and we need to hear all sides and put it out there so we can talk about it. Put it on the table. We can't run and hide and act as ostriches, put our heads in the sand. No, we have to address this head on.
Exactly.
And the comment was brought up. You don't really feel the pain until it comes to your door. When you get that 8 o'clock call or that 10 o'clock call to say your child has been shot down in the streets, and then several months later, we don't know who did it. Yet and still, the community is saying such and such and such did it. That old saying, snitches get stitches. That has to stop. You know.
Right.
And as you alluded to, even when we do give information or forthcoming with information, it's still a slow process, and you always have to consider whether or not our opinions and information is just being undermined. We have a comment though from Stephen Larkin, and he makes a very profound statement. If we can post that up. He says, talking about gun violence, no respect for oneself or character. If you believe in God, then you understand that Satan is deeply rooted in evil. And that's from Stephen Larkin, in this evil.
Yes. That's right, Stevie. That is so true.
Yeah. Wow.
So what else we got going on? Bobby, I thought you said you had something about education.
Oh yeah, let me do this. Okay. Yeah. We here in Broward County we have a new superintendent. Peter LaConta. And if I mispronounce his name, I do apologize. But Pete, I had a conversation with him, so I can call it. Well, I would call him Superintendent Pete. But I had a conversation with him, and Mr. LaConta wanted me to know, under no certain terms, would he never make himself available. Now I'm putting this out here right now because I want us to understand that Superintendent LaConta said he is available. He's going to bring his conversation to the people, and to the people meaning that it's not business as usual. It won't be to communities where we have gotten overlooked, right? Okay. There's some things that has happened in the past from former superintendents that were not likable in our community, of which he said he would address. He wouldn't state specifically about personnel, not calling names out, but things would happen. We do know that there has been some underhanded things done, and he is aware of that as well. So we should, Broward County school system, as it stands right now, is on a good track, as far as Mr. LaConta is concerned. And again, I will say to you, as I said to our Superintendent Pete, if you're lying, we will report it and you will be held accountable. And he assured me that if that was the case, so be it. So, but it looks like we're off to a great start, and people are raving about how our unbought and unbossed interim superintendent carried herself.
Mm-hmm.
When it was all said and done, Dr. Smiley grabbed her pocketbook and made an exit to the door. All she said was bye. You know, I did what I had to do, and that's it. So it's in your hands now. So congratulations and thank you, Dr. Smiley. Dr. Wanza, you're in place. Mr. Sullivan, our communications person, you're in place. So we expect something to happen, and not with that which was put into law with Brown versus the Board of Education, Topeka, Kansas, with all deliberate speed. No, we want it to happen now.
Mm-hmm. So. And I'm glad you brought this up because, you know, leadership, it starts with leadership. And when I look at some of the schools, especially in certain districts, and I see the dilapidation of what's going on, speaking specifically to Parkway Middle School, our thriving performing arts school, with those buildings that have probably older than both of us put together. But the bottom line is there has to be something done to bring our inner city schools up to par. And when we talk about the digital divide and how we're behind with communications and internet access, when we look at some of these older facilities, we know that there are going to be some issues there. The whole improvement process on getting these schools up to par. Pete, this is my request for you.
I see our good brother Wesley Boyd has another comment. And Wesley's good for dropping knowledge. He says, well, we are under the same program used in Rwanda to take out each other. And he asked us to research Operation Crimson Mist. That sounds deep.
You know,
thank you for that.
And speaking of education, and Bobby, that was a great segue in talking about Brown v. Board, Topeka Board of Education regarding our right, I would dare say, not just for equality, but for equity. You know, sometimes we talk on the equality side, but as I get older, the argument was more, I think, about equity. Mm-hmm. And so looking at this, and again, my topic for tonight, and I know we're closing up, is a story I ran across last night about a journalism. How do I want to say it? Let me get her name. Kathleen. Oh gosh, I can't get her name. But a young lady out of Texas. She was a graduate of Texas A&M. Graduated in the 80s. Yes. She was recently named as the director of Texas A&M's journalism department, in a sense, really to help revive the department that was kind of seeing it well past its better days. And anyway, so there was an announcement, and then soon after the announcement, Kylie, I don't want to keep referring to it as not by her name, but Dr. Kathleen, let me get her name right quick. Sorry about this. Right, Dr. Kathleen McElroy. Mm-hmm. Dr. McElroy, who has a stellar background in journalism, wrote for the New York Times, and at the time was even a director at University of Texas, a rival institution. Now she graduated from Texas A&M. Texas A&M is just like Florida State and University of Florida. They're bitter rivals. Here she was at an opportunity to come back to her alma mater, was offered the job, and then within hours of accepting, The contract was contingent of her being approved by the Board of Regents, which they thought would not be a problem, but soon it was. And so what was once a 10-year contract turned into a 5-year contract with no tenure. She even offered to accept that one. That was then rescinded to the point that they offered her a year contract that was basically under the at-will work clause, which is common in every state, that they can get rid of you at any sense. And, Ms. McElroy said she felt disheartened because, after all, she was an Aggie. And it really made me wonder. I mean, that made me wonder. I know I'm a Panther. I know I'm a Prairie View A&M Panther. I'm a part of the Texas A&M system. Mm-hmm. Ain't nothing about me or Aggie. And this is on light of, this is a couple of weeks after we've seen 6 African-American females ushered to the door from some major production companies, Netflix, Warner Brothers. And so now here we are. It's not just education, it's our livelihoods. And again, we started with Tulsa tonight. So, Bobby, I'm like you. What, rhetorically, what are we to do? I mean, are we putting too much of our value in white institutions and not in ourselves? I mean, I'm asking, and pardon me, I don't mean to end this with a vent, but I'm asking because it is what I attempt to do as a professional who lives outside what is commonly in our community, to provide a skill. I met very few West Side Gazettes who was willing to say, hey, come in and help us based on what you know and how you can help us. So how can we as a community who are out here doing some good things learn to call our people back? I'm just kind of reminded of Nehemiah. Nehemiah couldn't fix the wall. He just brought the resources. The folk to fix it was already there. So what are we waiting for when we have all of this great education? This woman went to Texas A&M. That was a prestigious college. I mean, a prestigious institution in Texas. And to graduate from that, and despite what they might think about affirmative action, I know she worked her ass off to get through that. And then you come back and now here they are. Nobody can even speak up for you to say, hey, no, she deserves to be treated like an Aggie. And I'm like, hell no, and you ain't gonna ever be an Aggie. So how do we take this frustration that we're never gonna be a part of a system that we know has shown us we don't want you, or we don't want you the way that you want us. I ain't gonna love you the way you want to be loved. What are we doing? And we've shown love to ourselves, and when we've shown love, it has prospered. Tulsa, Durham, Sistrum, that was our love to ourselves. Now we struggling to show love to ourselves and for ourselves. I mean, and I've had situations like that. I know what it's like to be in corporate America. And I also know what it's like to be treated like a nigga in corporate America. Mm-hmm. We can't cut our tongue as how we were treated. You can't tell me they didn't treat her like anything less than but how they treat a nigga. They wouldn't have done that to a white person. They wouldn't have rescinded the offer, and shame on us for believing, that's not what it was. Now who are we really fooling? So we need the black press to tell it honestly and without fear or favor. Because we hurting ourselves with this. And that's what I said, Bobby. I've seen it. I saw it at Texas Southern. A young brother who was working diligently had helped improve the endowment at Texas Southern University, had everything going. A young brother. One of the regents, a guy put there, I think either by Abbott or Rick Perry, and this Negro got upset because somebody didn't treat him like a VIP at homecoming. And created chaos. If I'm lying, I'm fine. And I'm telling you, I can go get the receipts. It became just that silly. And this wasn't a white guy. This one of us, supposedly us. And you fighting over the fact that you didn't get treated like a VIP at homecoming, and you didn't even go to TSU. Negro, you didn't even go to HBCU. And this is the stuff we're dealing with. This is the stuff that we asking ourselves why our kids are acting deranged. Hell, what are we doing? So we got to love our institutions better. I mean, and that's why. And again, we saying it publicly, Bobby. But we asking our state senator who oversees FAMU, please come talk to a lot of FAMU Rattler alumni about your intentions and your oversight of this area. It's too important. And I'm not saying that because he's a Republican. Be whatever you want to be, but come explain what you bringing us that's so much better. You owe it to every Rattler.
Well, Perry Busby,
speaking truth and power.
Yeah. All right, it's at that hour. Perry, thank you for that. I won't ask you for no closing comment. You laid it out there.
Absolutely, Perry. And again, it was heartfelt. We really feel the passion behind everything you just said, and it's an eye opener for me and many of us, because I just got to say it how I feel. We just can't continue to fall for the okie doke and think we're going to be treated justly. Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Perry. Okay, as we prepare to close the show tonight, I really want us to, I see what Stevie Larkin said, power concedes nothing without the demand. That was from Frederick Douglass. But I want us to remember that we're only here for temporary time. And while we're here, let's make it count. And I want us to remember tonight, when we go home, or wherever you are, to please say a prayer for Charles Cherry Jr. Charles, the publisher of the Florida Courier and the Daytona Times. Right now, he needs prayer, and his family does too. And I also want to leave us with, we talk about equity and equality. Well, if you're giving equality, you have a right to go watch the baseball game. But if the fence is so high and you can't see it, equity means that we'll give you a box to stand on so you can watch it just like the other person can. So maybe that in itself says why so many people want us to do away with DEI, because it gives us the box to stand on so we can see the game just like they can. But it also allows us to remember that there ain't nothing new under the sun. Been there before. We've overcome that, and we can overcome this as well. But it's going to take all of us working together. Together, each can accomplish much more. So let's work together as a team. God bless you all. We love you. And in the words of Dr. Matt King Carter, there ain't nothing you can do about it. Good night, all.
Good night.